Hey, Bridging the Gap.
It's Roger.
And Cheryl.
And my silly child. Our silly child. Anyway, what's going on, fam? We are back to get into this next level, the next generation. Well, not necessarily next generation, because we already talked about Isaac's brother and his descendants. So now, we're going to get into the next generation, because we're going to talk about Isaac's children, Esau and Jacob. Some interesting insights in this video. Let's throw up the graphic and start with that so people can make sure they're following along. Guys, we're talking about the descendants of Shem. We're really focused on God and God's priorities. Noah said that God is the God of Shem. So we're following that bloodline and the red names down to the next place where the Bible says the God of. It says the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, which you'll see just under Sarah, and then the God of Jacob. So we've talked about Isaac. We've talked about Abraham's other child, Ishmael, the firstborn, and the children he had with Keturah, and how he basically dismissed all of them, sent them away, and focused on God's priority, which was Isaac. So now we're looking at Isaac and this next generation. What we're going to cover is in chapters 20, 25, 27, and 28 of the book of Genesis. So we're going to read some of it. We're basically just going to paraphrase 27, and then we're going to read a little bit out of 28 and talk a little bit about the takeaways from these chapters, because we're seeing some things just kind of play out repeatedly as we go through this bloodline. So in chapter 25, we're going to look at verse 20 to the end. And it says, "And Isaac was 40 years old when he took Rebekah, the daughter of Bethuel, the Aramean of Paddan Aram, the sister of Laban the Aramean, to be his wife. Isaac prayed to the Lord on behalf of his wife because she was barren. And the Lord answered him, and Rebekah his wife conceived. But the children struggled within her. And she said, If it is so, why then am I this way? So she went to inquire of the Lord. And the Lord said to her, 2 nations are in your womb, and 2 peoples will be separated from your body. And one people shall be stronger than the other, and the older shall serve the younger. When her days to be delivered were fulfilled, behold, there were twins in her womb. Now the first came forth red all over like a hairy garment, and they named him Esau. Afterwards, his brother came forth with his hand holding on to Esau's heel, so his name was called Jacob. And Isaac was 60 years old when she gave birth to them. When the boys grew up, Esau became a skillful hunter and a man of the field, but Jacob was a peaceful man living in tents. Now Isaac loved Esau because he had a taste for game, but Rebekah loved Jacob. When Jacob had cooked the stew, Esau came in from the field. He was famished, and Esau said to Jacob, Please let me have a swallow of that red stuff, therefore I am famished. Therefore his name was called Edom. This is the nation of Edom, the Edomites. But Jacob said, First, sell me your birthright. Esau, behold, I am about to die. So of what use then is the birthright to me? And Jacob said, First, swear to me. So he swore to him and sold his birthright to Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau bread and lentil stew, and he ate and drank and arose and went on his way. Thus Esau despised his birthright. Okay, so a couple of things we want to talk about in this chapter. The first being this generational barrenness. I find it interesting that Abraham had the same situation with Sarah where he wanted a child. Actually, God came and promised him a child, and then it was like 10 years later before the child came, and they kind of went and did their own thing in disobedience to God. But they had this issue with having children. Now here his son is with the same situation. He goes and seeks the Lord, and the Lord hears his prayer, and now his wife is pregnant. And then she's having issues. And so she says, so if it is thus, why am I this way? If it is to be, if I'm to be pregnant, why am I having all these challenges? And God goes on to give her a thorough explanation. There's two nations inside your womb, and they're not going to get along. They're going to battle with one another. And he says, and the older will serve the younger. That is different. That's not how things play out, right? It is always the oldest who has the birthright. Before these children were even born, God had made his selection. Once again, we don't really know why, what exactly caused God to do that, but he chose. And so Rebecca knew. This was her prayer. It was Isaac's prayer that she get pregnant. It was her prayer to find out what's going on inside my body, and God revealed what's going on inside her body and told her that the older will serve the younger. So she knew going in before these kids were born that there was going to be these issues. And here comes Esau. He comes out. Jacob's got a hold of his leg. They're battling all the way in the womb, through the womb. They're going at it. But the next thing I want to kind of highlight is the description it gives of Esau. It says he was red and hairy all over, and then they called him Edom. The descriptions they give biblically, and this is for those who have a struggle with the idea that the people of the Bible were black. The description they give biblically of other people, they don't ever describe black. The only place that black is described is when it talks about Jesus, that his skin was like burnt bronze and hair like wool. And then it describes in the Song of Solomon, he says, I'm black and comely, right? So these are descriptions of normalcy. Mm-hmm. They're describing this child as coming out being red and hairy because he didn't look like everybody else. Obviously, if Jesus is of this lineage and the Bible describes him as woolly hair and skin like burnt bronze, that's what everybody he was related to looked like, right? So then you have examples like Moses and leprosy and that being something that was horrific. It was always described white as snow, right? There was no description of what Jacob looked like, just Esau, because he was the one who looked different. So, then the last thing I want to talk about is God spoke this thing into existence. He told Rebecca that it was going to be the older who served the younger. That was his thing. That was his thing and his thing alone. And it was already beginning to play out. Even though probably wasn't right of Jacob to ask for the birthright, Esau, he despised it.
Well, it started in the womb, and that's why
it started in the womb is where God spoke to it.
Right, but he spoke to it based on her asking.
Yeah, she asked. He spoke.
Yeah.
And right here in the same chapter, it's already happening.
Right. But I'm saying in her womb, it was already happening, and that's why she was asking, like, what's going on?
Right. She was asking in the womb, what's going on? Now they're grown.
Yeah.
Now they're grown. The older one has volunteered his birthright.
Yeah.
Volunteered it. So what God said was happening in the womb has now played out in real life, whether she knew about this conversation or not. Mm-hmm. Well, my point is, when God says he's going to do something, he's going to do what he said he's going to do. It's going to play out, right? Mm-hmm. So then the next chapter we want to look at is Genesis 27. And we're just going to summarize this chapter for you, and you can read it on your own. And this is Jacob's deception. So we're just going to pluck a couple verses, but let me give you the gist of it for those who don't know the story. When Jacob gets a little bit older, Isaac gets a little bit older, he knows he's about to pass. He calls in his firstborn, Esau. And it said there in the last chapter, he loved Esau, which is normal for the firstborn. He was bonded to Esau. Well, Jacob loved Rebekah because she knew what God was going to do. Or Rebekah loved Jacob because she knew what God was going to do with Jacob. So he calls in his firstborn and says, look, I'm about to pass. Here's what I want you to do. He was a hunter. I want you to go out and hunt some game for me. I want you to make the stew that I love, the meat that I love so much. And then I want you to bring it to me that after I eat, I might bless you. He was going to give his generational blessing to his firstborn child, which is the way it normally goes. Well, Rebekah overheard that conversation, and while he was out hunting, she went and grabbed Jacob, and they put together a plan for him to go in and pretend to be Esau because Isaac was old and his eyes were dim. He couldn't see all that well. So they put together a whole plan, including putting fur on the boy so he'll feel hairy like his brother. She concocted this whole plan, and he went in and got the blessing, right? So there's a couple of things I want to highlight. Most of you probably already know that story, but there's a couple of things I want to highlight in that chapter. The first is Genesis 5, or Genesis 27:5. It says, Rebekah was listening while Isaac spoke to his son Esau. So when Esau went to the field to hunt for game to bring home, Rebekah said to her son Jacob, behold, I heard your father speak to your brother Esau, saying, bring me some game and prepare a savory dish for me. I'm just going to read through 8. That I may eat and bless you with it in the presence of the Lord before my death. And now, therefore, my son, this is Rebekah speaking. Now, therefore, my son, listen to me as I command you. Go now to the flock and bring me 2 young choice goats that I may prepare a meal. And so she prepared the meal that Esau was supposed to prepare and got him dressed up, got Jacob dressed up. But I want you to hear the words. She said, Rebekah said to her son Jacob, behold, I heard your father speak. Yeah, that's not the one I'm looking for. It says, now, therefore, my son, listen to me as I command you. I ain't hear God in there nowhere. Nowhere did she say, the Lord said. The Lord told her what was going to happen. It was already beginning to take place. This is what it looks like when we want to, and this is basically the same thing that Abraham and Sarah did. You go ahead of God. God had given them a promise. Abraham and Sarah gave them a promise of a child. They couldn't wait. They went ahead of God. Here's Rebekah. Got a promise in the womb. After God answered their prayer and gave her children in her womb, she got a promise in the womb, and it was actually playing out. He had already given up his birthright. But she heard this conversation and decided, whoa, I got to jump into action. I got to do something. Listen to my command. That is not what God told her. Nowhere in this did God say, hey, this is what I need you to do. He didn't ask for help. Didn't need her help. It was already happening, as I mentioned. So then verse 37, scroll down a little bit in the story. All right, verse 37. It says, but Isaac replied to Esau, behold, I have made him your master, and all his relatives I have given to him as servants, and with grain and new wine I have sustained him. So this is Esau coming in after Rebekah and Jacob have deceived Isaac, and he said, Dad, what about me? And he said, look, son, I've made him, your younger brother, your master. What did God say in the womb? The older will serve the younger. The younger will be the master. There was just that little hitch in the middle. The hitch in the middle where Rebekah heard a conversation and sprung into action. And now I want you to see how that all plays out. The last thing we're going to read in here is verse 42 through 45 in chapter 27. And it says, Esau was ready to kill Jacob. He was that upset. Would you say? Would you say in that other video? I asked you, how would you feel if your parents picked your other siblings over you? You said you'd be ready to fight. Mm-hmm. Esau's ready to kill this cat, right? Because of what their mother did, he's ready to kill his brother. So verse 42, now when the words of her elder son Esau were reported to Rebekah, she sent and called her younger son Jacob and said to him, behold, your brother Esau is consoling himself concerning you by planning to kill you. Now, therefore, my son, obey my voice and arise, flee to Haran to my brother Laban. Stay with him for a few days until your brother's fury subsides, until your brother's anger against you subsides and he forgets what you did to him. Then I will send and get you from there. Why should I be bereaved of you both in one day? This chick is poking God's eye out. She is poking his eye. I heard this conversation. Now I need you to listen to my commandments. And now we're in a situation where your brother's about to kill you, and I've heard this. Somebody's relayed this message to me, and listen to her words. Behold, your brother Esau is consoling himself concerning you. Now, therefore, my son, obey my voice, and arise and flee and go to Haran to my brother Laban. Where was God in all of this? God told her point blank was going to happen. It had already started to take place before she decided she needed to intervene and force the issue. Now, after that, there's no more mention of God. Listen to my commandments. This is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to deceive your father and my husband, the head of this household. We're going to lie to him because I need to make sure what God said happened, right? Now, we're on the back end of this, and I put your life in danger. And I'm sending you away, and I'm telling you to listen to what I'm saying once again, because why should I be bereaved of both of you in one day? For real? Really? This is what happens when we get ahead of God. If you got a word from God, if you got an order, a command, or a promise from the Lord, he don't need our help. If he wanted help, he'd ask for help. She is poking his eye out, focused on herself. And now once again, just like Abraham and Sarah, they went before God and it caused everybody pain. Sarah, angry at her maidservant, get her and that child out of here. They'll never share a place with my child. Abraham, distressed. God said, don't be distressed. Listen to your wife. Let her go. I'm going to make a great nation of them, but you got to send them away. Everybody hurt simply because God made a promise and y'all can't just let him do what he do. Now here's your son and his wife doing the exact same thing, except for she deceived her own husband to do it. Sarah actually convinced Abraham. She flat out lied and told her son to lie. And now his life is at risk. And she's stressed out. Dad's upset. He's hurt. He's feeling betrayed by his child, his youngest child, his oldest child, and he can't pass the youngest child, his wife, and he can't pass the blessing to his oldest child, who he adored, simply because she felt the need to take over what God said he was already planning to do. And everything she speaks is about me. Listen to my commands. I overheard this conversation. I want you to go there. She is poking God's eye out and it's hurting everybody. That's just selfish. The next one.
All right, I'll read this one. And Isaac called Jacob. This is Genesis 28, verses 1 through 9. And Isaac called Jacob and blessed him and charged him and said unto him, Thou shalt not take a wife of the daughters of Canaan. Arise, go to Padan Aram, to the house of Bethuel, thy mother's father, and take thee a wife from thence of the daughters of Laban, thy mother's brother. And God Almighty bless thee and make thee fruitful and multiply thee, that thou mayest be a multitude of people, and give thee the blessing of Abraham to thee and to thy seed, and with thee, that thou mayest inherit the land where thou art stranger, which God gave unto Abraham. And Isaac sent away Jacob, and he went to Padan Aram unto Laban, son of Bethuel, the Syrian, the brother of Rebekah, Jacob's and Esau's mother. When Esau saw that Isaac had blessed Jacob and sent him away to Padan Aram to take him a wife from thence, and that as he blessed him, he gave him a charge, saying, Thou shalt not take a wife of the daughters of Canaan, and that Jacob obeyed his father and his mother, and was gone to Padan Aram. And Esau, seeing that the daughters of Canaan pleased not Isaac his father, then went Esau unto Ishmael, and took unto the wives which he had Mahalath, the daughter of Ishmael, Abraham's son. I'm messing all these names up today. The sister of Nabal.
That's a tough one.
To be his wife.
Right.
Yeah.
So, this is the actual sending away of Jacob. Isaac saying, look, go to your mother's family. Do not take a wife from the daughters of Canaan, from this land that we're at. Go to your family, your mom's family, and take a wife from there. Knowing Esau's going to kill this cat. So now Esau, the firstborn, who is once again the firstborn rejected by his father, through deceit this time, but still rejection nonetheless. Wanting to please his father, he heard what he had said to Jacob about taking a wife from Canaan. He just wanted his father's love. He wanted to please his deeds. What does it say? It says, so Esau saw that the daughters of Canaan displeased his father Isaac. What was the solution to that problem for Esau? Trying to win favor with his father. And Esau went to Ishmael and married, had wives with a couple of Ishmael's. He went to his uncle. That's Isaac's brother.
Cousins.
Right. I'm going to go marry. If he's going to marry in the family, but you don't want it to be these Canaanites, and I can't go to that side of the family. I've been cast out. I've been rejected by that side of the family. How easy is it to go connect with your uncle's family who's also been rejected and cast out? Can you see the generational hurt and the bonds that that's creating in this family of Shem? He ain't had nowhere else to go. Where would you go? Where would I go? If I couldn't go to my mother's family, and my mother deceived my father to, in my eyes, rob me of my birthright, even though I already gave it away. But in my eyes, what you did was foul. I'm okay. Let me choose what I do with my birthright. What you did was foul, and I don't know why you did it. And now my father is bound by this deceit, and he's telling my brother, go to your mother's people and get a wife. I can't go there. I cannot go there. But I can look over here and say, wow, I have family over here. Maybe that'll please my father. And they know what it's like to be rejected. They know what it's like to be cast aside. How much hurt is there involved in all of this? And why? Once again, going back to Deuteronomy 28, folks, the blessings that the Israelites, and we just got to Israel because Jacob is Israel. Look at all the generational stuff they had to overcome before they could even get to that discussion of Deuteronomy 28. This is generational stuff, right? But going into the promised land in Deuteronomy 28, there was 15 verses of blessings. All that negative stuff that we know no one except for descendants of chattel slavery have ever endured. All the rest of that 68 verses in chapter 28 of Deuteronomy was about what happens if you don't obey. They had crystal clear examples of the strife and the hurt and the pain that comes from just not listening to the Father, to the Most High. Going back to Ham, doing things he shouldn't have done, and the curse that was spoken over him. We still don't know why they chose Shem. I've actually come to realize recently that Japheth is definitively the oldest son there too. So you got Japheth, Ishmael, and Esau. All of these children of Noah, all of the people who should have been the God of, right? They're the firstborn. They should have got the birthright. None of them got the birthright. None of them are mentioned as being the God of. There's rejection and pain all throughout. But there was no disobedience on Noah's part or Japheth's part or Shem's part. It just God chose Shem. From that point forward, we see God making promises and us thinking we have to intervene in those promises. And the hurt and pain that it's causing on a generational basis for everybody involved. And now they're going into the promised land, Deuteronomy 28. And God is basically saying, look back and listen and move forward. Here's all you got to do. Be obedient. And these first 15 verses are going to be great. Then he tried to scare the mess out of them with the rest of those verses, and it still didn't work. He told them what was coming with disobedience. they seen what happened in the past with us trying to intervene and disobey God or do his work for him. They had examples of that mess. He tried to scare them with what was coming. And we still stiff-necked enough that we going to do what we going to do, because that's just how we roll. This is why this stuff matters. This is why who matters. Because even in the New Testament, if you understand or believe anything about the Word of God, old or new, God wants you to repent. He wants to open those eyeballs, have you see the truth for what it is, and say, I was going this way, and that wasn't working, and it was disobedient. Now I'm going this way, period, in the story. How do you do that if you don't know that this is you? You're the main character in the book, and you can't identify yourself. You can't fix that problem. You cannot change what you don't know needs to be changed. We need to be able to see the pattern play out in our ancestors and identify that pattern in us to stop it. Because I guarantee you it's there. See it every single day. So with that, I think that's all we need to cover on Isaac, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Now we're going to, I don't know if we're really going to break down Jacob. Let me think about this next video. I don't know if we need to break down Jacob. We know who the tribes of Israel are. We know a lot of stuff they went through. I think what we need to do now is really kind of move on to how this is played out in history and how the Bible told us it was going to play out in history. I think what we're going to focus on now is what we talked about in the beginning, is the times of these children. The time Ham had, the time that Shem had, and this Japheth's time right now, the time of the Gentiles. This is what Jesus was talking to when he was here. He said the temple will be trodden down by the Gentiles until the time of the Gentiles be complete. I think that's where we're going to go to next. So, from this point forward, you're going to hear me talk about Israel. You're not going to hear me talk about Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. You're going to hear me talk about Israel, because that's what God talked about. That's when the Lord was here, he talked about Israel. We're going to talk about that. And how
Israel, the people, not the place.
Israel, the people. Jacob's 12 children, which he changed Jacob's name to Israel. So all of these, not the land, it doesn't matter who's in that land over there. That's Canaan's land that was promised to Israel. Israel is Jacob. He had 12 children. That's why all the 12 tribes are recognized as Israel. And we're going to talk about that because we need to look at what the Bible, we're talking about the God that we say we love and serve and his priorities. If you look at the Old Testament and the New, God dealt with Israel.
Period.
End of story. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. He dealt
from the beginning to the end.
To the end. And you don't come to him unless you go through Israel. Which is why, that
the people.
The people.
I want to keep saying that because I know
land.
In our culture, in our society, when we think of Israel, we think of the location of Israel because that's how they have us thinking. And when we're talking about the people. Right.
Several videos back we talked about, the verse in the Bible where he's talking to Abraham. He says, I'll bless those who bless thee and I'll curse those who curse thee. This is why so many Christians are focused on the people in the land right now, thinking we have to support Israel. Why everybody's hyped up on Trump normalizing things in the Middle East and normalizing relationships between it. That's not Israel.
Placing the capital in
the capital, the embassy, the capital.
The embassy.
All that stuff he was trying to do is as being a blessing to Israel. You're not blessing Israel. You are blessing people who are Jewish by their own acknowledgement, their own words. They call themselves Jewish. This shirt is not white-ish. It's white. So, point being, and no pun intended about the Jews with the white shirt. It just happened to be the color I got on. But we have to understand that from Old Testament to New, to the book of Revelations, God dealt with Israel. And he's always been an open God and a welcoming God. Even when they were in Egypt with all the stuff they went through, when they had an exodus, said there was a mixed multitude who went out with them. but they came to God through Israel.
Mm-hmm. It has not changed.
And it will not change.
Yeah.
Never going to change.
Yeah.
And the Bible makes that clear from beginning to end.
Yeah.
So we're going to start talking a little bit in the next video about the times that these boys had, and the time that we're in now, and what we need to understand about this time, that we, whether we be Israel or whether we be Gentiles, and I'm not talking about us, I'm talking about the Gentiles who are not Israel or us as descendants of Israel, what we need to be focused on. Because I promise you, God's focus has not changed. He told us who he is the God of throughout. He's only dealing with the last one that he said he's the God of, and that's Jacob, who is Israel. He has not dealt with anybody else and will not deal with anybody else. And you cannot even begin to think you have a relationship with him until you understand what his priorities are. So it's critical that we all come into some level of understanding for where we are right now at this time in history. So with that, we're going to wrap this one up. And looking forward to our second discussion on Sunday about the people of the book, conversations. Mm-hmm. The first one was good. It was interesting, and I got some homework I have to do to prepare for this next one, which is good. But hopefully, if y'all missed it last time, you can join us this time for those who signed up. And if you're not signed up and you want to sign up,
just go to the website and send us an email.
Website is
bridgingthegap400.com.
There we go.
You can go to our contact page.
And if you're going to join up, please try to, if you get this video, try to do that immediately if you want to be a part of this next conversation, because it is coming up at 4:30 on Sunday. So we'd like to have some time, and this evening begins the Sabbath. So we don't really do work on Saturday. So hopefully you can catch us and get us an email before it gets dark tonight. All righty.
Bye-bye.